down by this dam here in Canberra, and I guess it's not really up. There you go, you can see it there now. It kind of makes me think about how we see all that water that's behind a dam, and once that dam opens, man, it's coming out. If that dam wall ever cracked, she's going to flood out. And it's set me thinking about this whole inflation cycle. Here in Australia, we have this thing called Centrelink, and it's basically a social system, social welfare. And, I'm not saying this is what will happen, but just some thoughts on that I wanted to just quickly put together, just provoke a bit of thought maybe. See, if you look at the podcast that we have on there about Venezuela, you can see that Venezuela is its answer to inflation is socialism, and that's basically government worldwide. The government's answers to high inflation is socialism, socialism type programs and things that they think is going to bring about the answer. Obviously the standard one is let's raise interest rates, but when they here in Australia, and it's probably similar in other parts of the world, they can't really raise interest rates to fix inflation because the economy is still locked down. So we have pretty much a non-productive economy in many ways. And I mean, how do you raise interest rates on that? All you're going to do is put more pressure on already burdened businesses. So I think here in Australia, we're going to find the government we have an election cycle that we're in, and soon. In Australia, you can call an election. The government can call an election. I mean, there's a date they have to do it by, but if they don't, they can call an election before that at any time when it suits them. So they're trying to hide inflation for that reason. I think Centrelink is a major part of what Australia will do with its inflation problems. And it's sort of more polite than what we would have seen in places like Venezuela, where the government just steps in and nationalizes everything. And if you listen to the Venezuela recording, he talks about how if your private business goes well, the government steps in and takes that business. And I won't go into all of that. If you're that interested, you can listen to the Venezuela inflation recording. But I think what we're going to see here is a lot of businesses and people have massive debt to the government, and our social system of what we call Centrelink will, I think, ultimately nationalise the debt with that. They may not, but I think they will. They already, here in Canberra where I live, they own a lot of the housing. The government owns it, and the people that are in those houses are on Centrelink. They're on the welfare and the benefits that they get from the government. And the government, they get rental assistance and free medical, and like Venezuela, when they work for the government, they get given gift bags twice a month, which will have food and things in it while they're working for $6 a month, equivalent of $6 a month. They can't feed their family for a day. So here in Australia, my prediction, it will be that we will find, like when I was in the US, massive defaults on mortgages. As that happens, as inflation goes up, the government will step in and nationalise the debt. They will, kind of like they did in the US with the subprime meltdown, Fannie and Mae and Freddie Mac, was it? The Americans, you guys will know. They, basically the government did deals with them. And so I think here what's going to happen as people default on their housing, the government will step into the banks and say, all right, we'll carry that because we don't want, everybody turfed out on the streets. And I lived in a house for a time in Boston that was from what they call short sale. So it was, and we know, you Americans that may watch this know that during the subprime meltdown, there was massive empty homes. People would go in and rip the wiring out and the plumbing out and the air conditioning and cash it in for scrap metal. And I think here, rather than have ghost towns, I think we're going to end up with nationalised housing. And so then the government ultimately has a lot of options of what they can do with that. And what they do here, excuse me, with the Centrelink is they'll come along and they'll say, all right, we need you to, well, you know, you're getting your benefits, you're getting your rent, you're getting things like that. So they'll come along and they'll say, we want you to get vaccinated. You're like, well, I don't want to get vaccinated. They're like, well, then you will cut your benefits. You want to feed your family, get vaccinated. Things like that. So they basically own whoever's on their benefits, and they do that currently. So they'll say to you, if you're not, you know, if you don't have this, we're going to cut your benefits by $100 a week. They've sent out test kits for cancer, bowel cancer. Now, they don't penalise people for not doing that, but the potential is there. So I think that's where it will go. Now, people can say, well, what's the big deal with that? Well, it's a very big deal with that. It's socialism. Because ultimately, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy if it goes that way. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's already happening. So I think the answers to those things is really, I mean, now ahead of time, if you can, I believe it's a good time to lessen your debt burden, to try to get yourself out of debt. Anyone that's looked into inflation, and if you look at those videos, you're going to find that the currency devalues, and that's what we can't grasp. If you've got, I don't know, $10,000 in the bank, then, and you're at 50% inflation, you've basically lost 50% of the value of your money. But you don't see that because our brains are programmed to think we've got that money in the bank, and you do. But the buying power of that money has been less than so badly that you might as well have 5,000 in the bank. But, well, it's like having 5,000 in the bank before the inflation. So I think what'll transpire there is, you know, people say, well, what's the final solution? Should I invest in gold? Should I get Bitcoin? Should I get... I don't think any of those things are a complete answer. I think it's foolish to think that you can run to something like that, because like in the US, after I believe it was the Great Depression, they outlawed gold. You couldn't have gold. You had to turn your gold in. And the government comes along and says, and I understand their logic, they're saying, look, if you want a country, you're going to give us your money or your gold. And so you do. And so I think it's the same with things like Bitcoin. If that stays around, I know there's a lot of controversy and opinions on that, but I think with things like Bitcoin, you know, and I get it, I know all the arguments of, oh, it's offshore, it's unregulated. Let me tell you something, if the government wants to regulate something bad enough, they'll regulate it. They'll outlaw being able to do anything with it, or they'll tax it, or they'll want it. Bitcoin is not the final answer to solve all your problems. The final answer is really walking in the peace of what you know is right for your life. And I think we're going to have some more teaching on that, how to know peace. I have a saying that says, follow the peace. You know, inside of you, you know when a decision's good or bad. Now, you can run those decisions with your head, or you can run it with what I would call God in your life. And we all have that. The people that have been to these camps, the Epic in Australia, they talked about something just told me to come. One man said, I don't believe in God, he said, but something's just telling me truth. And when I listen to that truth, it works out for my family. That's the voice we listen to. That's the peace that you follow. That's where your relationship with your Creator begins. And I think religion has obviously offended that, and so people get so upset and so opinionated about religion. Let's leave religion out of it and just walk that relationship with your Creator. And that's a beautiful individual thing for each of us. I call it the romance of God. So here on this inflation side, I think the foundation of where we're going is to feed that peace, because as you feed that peace, as you are that peace, as you allow that peace to be who you are, that's where all of your answers lie. And it's a sweet thing. Sorry, I'm putting the sun in our eyes there. So anyway, I just wanted to put a quick little, I always say that, don't I? Quick little, but just putting together this little snippets here and there when it comes, and to encourage you that really, yes, it's frightening. Yes, I mean, to think about inflation and where it can go, especially after listening to that video of Raul on Brazil talking about it, and Venezuela talking about it. It's a mess, you know, and suicide off the charts and things like that. And I want to make it very clear today. There is hope. There is hope. I don't care how much debt you're in. I don't care what your problems are. There is hope. There is a way. There is a way. And we're here to walk that out together. Don't get worried about the future. Live your today. Live your today. Do the best you can with today. And let's see where it goes. Because I tell you, when we come together in that community of life, that community of love, and we say, look, we can do this. We can. We can. We saw it at Epic here, at our freedom camp. You know, people were giving haircuts. Others were, you know, feeding for free and fixing cars for free and just helping each other in that freedom and in that life. And we're going to see a lot more of that. Bartering is going to come up, you know, where people are going to barter, and it's not going to be to take advantage and destroy each other. It's going to be in a spirit of life and love to say, I'm going to give you peace, and you're going to give peace, and our needs are going to be met. So community is a wonderful and an important thing. Just trust yourself. Trust yourself. Trust that peace that's in you. Talk to God about it and see where it goes. See where it goes. I've got a book on there. It's my sort of journey out of religion and into this way of life. And when you read it, if you get it, I would hope that you would see the trauma in some of it, to come out of that control of trying to control my daily living to letting go and letting it come to me. And I think as I learnt to let go, and I only learnt to let go by wearing out, as I wore out and let go, answers came. And as those answers came, they brought life, they brought freedom. And I've lived this for 20 years. So I want to encourage you. I'm not talking out of turn here. I've lived for 20 years with this. So you can do it. You can do it, because I am not Superman. Trust me, I had many a night where I was basically wanting to melt down, not knowing what was going to come tomorrow. But it came. And God will never fail you if you allow him to be your source. And we're going to talk more about that. But anyway, so I just wanted to put that together, give a few thoughts, you know, and it's a different perspective, a different way of looking at things, but it's a good perspective. You may not live it the same way. You may not see it happen the same way. Give some thought to the perspective. Because I tell you what, we're all in this together, and what works for one of us, we need to feed it in. So if you're having things to do with inflation, questions, things that you're wanting to ask, then on the inflation site you can do that. We also have the Global Freedom Movement page, which is putting up videos from around the world and photos from the different freedom movements around the world, and some wonderful footage on there. And you know, I'd certainly appreciate, just put the word out. Get the word out, because we're about hope and we're about freedom. We're not about political statements. We're not about, venting. This is about constructive answers that come out of a community of love and life. You can do it. You can do it. I can do it. We're going to do it together. So God bless you. I don't even know you folks, but I love the spirit of who you are, because if you didn't have that, you wouldn't be here. So let's walk in that spirit together and see where it takes us, because in the end, we always win.